I've been thinking about making YouTube videos for the past 2 years now, and I actually recorded a few last year, but I never posted them. It wasn't until yesterday that I randomly decided to search up videos of abortion because I knew there were a lot of miscarriage ones, but abortion is a touchy subject, so I didn't know what was out there on YouTube and if abortion was ever talked about. I actually made a video about my experience with depression regarding loss, and I was afraid to call it abortion because I felt like maybe people would debate over the topic. What I realize now is that there's probably nothing you guys can say that's worse than what I've already told myself. So bear with me a little bit while I give you a little bit of background information. So I was living with my boyfriend at his mom's house for 2 years. I never really established a relationship with her because she's really intimidating and we just had different schedules and I never ran into her in the house. So we didn't talk or anything. It got to the point where I felt really uncomfortable living there because I was just avoiding her on purpose by then. So eventually, at the end of August 2015, I moved back home with my parents. A week after that happened, their house got robbed. I went to visit them the week after, and she came home and saw me, and she got pissed off. She was asking, like, why is she here? We all know the type of person she is, and she was basically accusing me of stealing her things because only her jewelry was missing. After I left, Mike argued with his mom. Then he came over to my house. So my mom knew how upset I was and knew a little bit about the situation when I came home. So she went to talk with Mike about what happened. He basically told her, I love your daughter. I want to be with her for the rest of my life. And she took that as a proposal. Note that he actually did not propose to me at that time. I thought that we would actually break up because how can I start a life with someone and be with someone if their mom hates me that much? That night, my mom told Mike that she would talk to my dad about us getting married. And then it wasn't until my birthday dinner that my dad had invited Mike into our family. Now, with all that craziness happening, I had already missed my period twice. I had my last period in July and I didn't get one in August, but I thought that was kind of normal because I just started a new job in July. And so I thought maybe it was just from the stress of the job because previous situations I did miss a period due to stress and it was like not a real pregnancy scare or anything like that. So then I waited until September to see if I would get one then. Normally my cycle is pretty long, maybe 34 days, and sometimes it can be late, so I waited a little bit longer. So a week after my birthday was when I finally tested. And thinking back, I did notice that there were some signs because when I was trying to work at my new job, I couldn't focus. There were 1 or 2 weeks where I actually started sleeping during the job when I was trying to review orders. I'm a fraud analyst, so I just remember my eyes kept closing and I kept nodding off like this, and I just couldn't focus at all. I tried to drink Starbucks double shots, those little cans. It wasn't help at all. So I was like, what the hell? So one day when I was about to meet up with Mike and our friend, I decided to stop by Rite Aid to buy some pregnancy tests before going to meet them for dinner. So when we got to Red Robin, I was really nervous and I couldn't really wait to find out. And so I went to their bathroom and peed on the stick. Normally we have to wait a few minutes for the results, but nope. There was a big, fat, clear, positive plus sign, like right away. I was pregnant, and I just remember turning really red and panicky and not really knowing how to react. Another backstory is that I was always afraid that I couldn't get pregnant. You see how easily people get pregnant, right? I had a friend that got pregnant while on the pill, and that's like 99.9% effective. And condoms are like 98% effective, right? Sorry to my parents or relatives if you ever watch this, but I'm an adult now, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, I'll admit I was having unprotected sex. We always use the pull-out method, and so, there is a high chance that I could get pregnant, but I never did. When I was with that ex, I always thought that if I had ever gotten pregnant, that I'd be okay with it, that I would keep it, and it wasn't his choice. I am a Christian, and I knew what was right and what was wrong, and I wanted to have kids, so it was the right thing to do. Now that I was actually really in the situation, it was a different story. I didn't know what to do, so I came out of the bathroom and I looked Mike directly in the eyes, and I said, we're screwed. I see his face immediately grow dark, and we tried to have a normal dinner with our friend, and then we went home to talk about it. He never threatened me to get an abortion, and he never was forceful about convincing me to have one. But basically, I could see the inner turmoil inside, and I could see how much it was stressing him out. I told him I would go to doctors first to make sure that I was actually pregnant. I made an appointment with Planned Parenthood. That was because, at my new job, I was still on contract for 90 days, and so I didn't have health insurance yet. With them, I did a urine test, and they did confirm that I was pregnant. They only guessed, based on my last period, that I was probably around 11 weeks. By then, I was more aware of the symptoms because I knew that I was pregnant. When I would go to the bathroom stall at work, just staring at the toilet, even if it wasn't stinky around me, like I would just gag. I'd never throw up, but I would gag a lot and want to. At that time, I felt like it'd be really selfish of me to keep the baby if Mike wasn't ready. And I felt that he would resent me for the rest of his life. We had talked about getting married before I even found out I was pregnant. So most people would think I got married because I was pregnant, which isn't the case. The other issue was the matter of fact of growing up in a traditional Chinese household. My mom always told me how shameful it was to have sex before marriage and how it would bring so much shame upon my father and our family if I ever got pregnant before getting married. And so because of that, I didn't tell my parents, and I felt like I needed to terminate. Planned Parenthood only had appointments maybe 1 or 2 weeks out, and I was actually on a high pay scale, paying out of pocket. It would have costed me about $700 for a pregnancy that was under 12 weeks, and it would cost over $900 for a pregnancy that was over 12 weeks. If I made an appointment farther out, I thought that I would have to pay $900. And so I made an appointment with a clinic called FPA Women's Health in Oakland. To be honest, I was kind of surprised at the women in the waiting room because I always imagined that it'd be younger women and teenagers who would want to terminate their pregnancy. But here I was, I just turned 28. You assume that at that age, women were ready to start a family. I saw two other women, probably around the same age as me, and also a woman in her 40s. So that was a bit surprising to me. As I was in the waiting room, I grew concerned because while I was on the phone with the phone agent, I had told them that I was maybe 11 to 12 weeks along. When I arrived there, I actually heard the receptionist talking to other patients saying that at that clinic in Oakland that they only do surgical procedures for pregnancies under 9 weeks. And they only use local anesthesia, which I didn't want. I wanted general anesthesia. And so the phone agent had also told me to fast, but obviously it wasn't necessary. I think that they told everyone else to fast too because we were in the waiting room for about 3.5 hours and we were starting to joke about like ordering a pizza together. When it was my turn, I explained to them that I might be 11 to 12 weeks. Should I still be seen or should I just go? And they said to come in anyway just to make sure. So I did a urine test and then they called me in later on for ultrasound. The ultrasound technician was really warm and welcoming. I really appreciated working with her. She told me that it was only 10 weeks and 3 days and that I was having twins. Yeah, twins. I was really shocked because I thought it was a miracle. Twins don't run in my family and it doesn't run in Mike's family either. So at that point, I was just really surprised and I didn't know what to do. She showed me a picture of the ultrasound, and I remember being sad about it, but also thinking about that episode of Friends where Rachel couldn't see her baby. That was pretty much like me because I was looking at the picture and there should be little dots, and I assumed there should be two little specks to be my twins, and I didn't know what I was looking at. So yeah, they referred me to another clinic that would be able to do the procedure, and they charged me $130, which I felt like was such a waste of my time and waste of my money because when I go to the next clinic, I have to pay another $550 to have the whole procedure and do the whole ultrasound all over again. When I got home, I told Mike that we were having twins. I can't remember now how the conversation went, but what I do remember him saying was that he felt like he wouldn't be able to graduate anymore and that he would have to take on 2 jobs for us to raise twins. I really appreciate the fact that he thought he would have to make those sacrifices to keep the babies. But again, I didn't want him to blame me for not being able to finish this degree. He didn't finish it his first time around because at that time his father had cancer. He dropped out of school to work to pay for the medical bills and mortgage, and he continued to work after his father had passed away. It wasn't until maybe a year after we had first started dating that I encouraged him to go back to school and finish his degree. I didn't want to feel like I ruined his life or held him back from his achievements just because I wanted children, because I can have children in the future. And also, I've always been a realist. I've always overthought about everything, overanalyzed everything. We were both living with our parents. We still currently are. We were both in our new jobs, which were pretty low entry level, like customer service type jobs. So we didn't make a lot of money. We both had school loans, car loans. How can we actually provide a good life for our twins? And it broke our hearts to make the decision to terminate. My appointment with FPS Medical Group was the following day. By the way, I do want to mention how appreciative I am to have good friends that listened to me and, if not supported me, then at least respected my decision. And they drove me to my appointment since you need someone to pick you up after the procedure. FPS was a lot different from FPA Women's Health because I feel like FPA only took one woman in at a time, which made it take so much longer, versus FPS was kind of like an assembly line. Like there was different stations. There was the urine test, the blood pressure and blood test, a consultation station where they went over your medical history and make you sign documents and stuff like that. Then there was the ultrasound, the changing room, waiting room, operating room, and then another restroom. And everyone was really warm and compassionate, and they treated each patient with kindness and respect and no judgment at all. And so I really appreciated that. I felt like I was a human being and I was okay. When I went into the consultation room, they asked me if I would sign a document to allow for the fetal tissue to be tested and experimented on. I wasn't prepared for that. I didn't know what to do. At the time, I thought, well, I guess if I couldn't have my twins, then maybe they could do some good. Maybe they can be used to find a cure for something. But later on in the following months, I actually felt so much guilt. I imagined that I let my babies become science experiments in petri dishes and that they were being poked and prodded. I was really devastated about my decision. After I changed, they gave me a pill to put on the side of my mouth to dissolve. I wasn't supposed to swallow it. It was just supposed to be there for, I think, half an hour, and they gave me a cup to spit into. And I also had to sit on one of those mats that were kind of like those puppy pee pads in case I was bleeding, because basically the pill was to make sure that because I had twins that they would detach from the uterus. I remember being in the waiting room so long, women were in and out while I was just waiting there, and I was watching the second Big Fat Greek Wedding movie. And then when I finally got called in, I was with a doctor and an anesthesiologist, and when they were putting me under, they were asking me questions like what I did the previous night, and I was talking about how I watched a Snow White movie or something like that, and I got knocked out. I woke up while I was being wheeled into the next room. I just remember looking around the room, feeling okay. They were just checking my vitals, making sure I was emotionally okay, and then I walked over to the resting room where I just kind of sat there with a heating pad for about 30 minutes waiting for my ride, and they gave me tea and sugar cookies. There was a woman that was next to me that was completely crying her eyes out. I didn't feel the same way. I had actually done a lot of research before I made my decision. It was only about a week that I knew that my twins were inside of me, and I was reading stories about how to raise twins. At that point, I already felt like a mother, and I felt protective of what was inside of me. I also loved them, even though I wouldn't be able to meet them. I went on baby apps to see the size and development of the babies. They were the size of strawberries. They already had fully developed vital organs and fingernails, and they were growing hair. So they weren't little cells anymore. They were people. I read about abortion in relation to Christianity. Of course, it's murder. But I read about, can I be forgiven for it? And I read about other people's experiences too. Some felt really happy and relieved after it happened because they didn't want the kids. Some felt really sad because maybe they were pressured into it and they actually did want the kids, or some were just really emotional because of the hormones. I just felt numb. I knew something had happened to me, but I didn't feel anything. It bled like a normal period from noon to 10 p.m. And then when I went to shower, I passed a really huge blood clot. And after that, the bleeding had stopped. And I was also prescribed painkillers and antibiotics, but I wasn't cramping or anything, so I didn't take any. After the abortion, I felt determined to never forget about my twins. I made an engraved ring with 10/5/15-10/5, which was the date that it happened and how old the twins were. So from then until August 28th, 2016, I pretty much drowned myself in work and wedding planning. Actually, Mike and I only cared about getting married on paper, having a civil ceremony at City Hall, which happened on December 28th, 2015. After that, we were kind of forced into having a Chinese banquet because my mom wanted us to celebrate. She wanted our family to be excited for us. And during that time, all I could do was stress over not even wanting the banquet and the fact that my future mother-in-law hated me. She didn't want us to get married, and she didn't meet our parents until the day of the banquet. Here and there, I would let myself be depressed. Like when it came to April, that's when the twins would have been born. When it was May for Mother's Day, because I was no longer a mother. And then again in October, when it'd be the anniversary. I would often pray to God saying that I didn't deserve forgiveness. I knew I've done, and I deserve to be in pain. So, yeah. I also prayed that maybe one day a miracle can happen, that somehow their souls can be saved and they'd be reborn again. Obviously, that doesn't happen, but I kept praying that anyway, just because I desperately wanted to see them again. I eventually did tell my mom about the twins on a day where I was just really stressed and frustrated, and I felt like I couldn't handle it anymore. She cried a lot and she yelled at me, "Twins? Why did you get an abortion? Twins? How could you not tell me and Daddy? Baby twins, why did you do this? Did you know that you could have died?" She always warned me and my cousins about pregnancy because her and my aunts bled a lot during their deliveries, so I assumed that she expected the abortion would cause me to bleed out and possibly die too. She said that she and my dad would have helped us raise the twins. It's kind of funny that you spend your whole time shaming pregnancy before marriage, and once you realize that it's your own grandchildren, you change your mind. In my heart, though, I knew they would have helped us, regardless if we were shamed by other family members. But I also thought, what if Mike and I did break up at that time? I would be a single mother of twins. Right now, or even back then, I couldn't afford to live in the Bay Area on my own. And even right now, me and Mike can't afford to pay rent. Living outside, we'd be living paycheck to paycheck. So how can I provide a good life for my twins? I also had a lot of guilt because after the abortion, I actually had a cousin that passed away. And I felt like I'm feeling so much pain over loss of unborn children. But what about my aunt who had to raise her child? I can't imagine how much she feels. My cousin was 33 at the time, and she passed away from ovarian cancer. She wasn't married and didn't have children, so I felt really selfish to be younger and married, and I terminated mine. In 2017, I finally realized that I needed to stop torturing myself. So I took off the ring and I tried to make myself a better person. I figured I would have to accept the fact that they're gone and that I would have to move on if I wanted to have kids again in the future. During that time, I actually gained 30 pounds due to depression, and I began my weight loss journey in 2017. I was trying to reach a healthier weight before trying to have kids again. Because Mike is currently in his last year of his school, so we had started trying for a baby this past December, and I became pregnant in March. But that will actually be another video. So thank you for watching, and I assume you came across my video for a specific reason, so I hope I was able to help you in some way.